Yeah, let's talk about the Diggs acquisition. Talk about first what he does for this team on the field, and I think there might be an interesting level to this of what a guy like Diggs, and it's been well covered how this is now his third team that he's been traded to, or forced to trade to. We'll talk about what that does for a locker room, a young core of guys. But first, on the field, what kind of impact do you see him having?
Yeah, I could see him having like a 700 or 800 yard season efficiently. Like, I don't think he's going to have this monster year. I think he's going to have a very contributable to success year. Like, I think he's going to be a key piece to them, especially like we talked about, third downs, red zone, the critical plays. He's going to take less coverage and less eyes. He's going to take more eyes off of guys like Nico Collins, guys like Dell, and not to mention, like, they get good quality depth across the board. Where some teams, if they lose a guy, dude, the drop off is steep. And I mean, they also, like, Mechie's a good player too. Like, it sounds like they're keeping Mechie. Like, they have a really deep receiving core. They got a good running back room, and I just think this turns into, okay, you want this to be a Nico Collins game where you give him a lot of attention across the secondary. Okay, Diggs is going to eat. He's going to get his completions. He's going to get his catches, receptions, all that. He's going to, C2 split two, get vertical on third down. He's going to get a good yak. Like, I don't see him being the guy they're trying to scheme up routes for him all the time, but I think he's going to find his in the system. And that's kind of how the 49ers have had success. You don't know who's going to pop off in the 49ers offense besides Christian McCaffrey. You know he's going to get his 20 fantasy points, but some weeks Ayuk has a big game. Some weeks Debo has a big game. Some weeks Jawan Jennings has a big game. Oh, it's a Kittle game, right? Like, you don't really know. And so I think what this allows them to do is they don't have to scheme up guys as much. They can get good, talented guys running the system, running the concepts, running the crossing routes, and guys are just going to be open. And CJ is going to find them. And some days it might be a Diggs game.
For a young quarterback, I feel like you hear this thrown around when Odell Beckham was moving around. Like you hear a young guy like Baker in Cleveland wanted to feed him targets. And you had this narrative that whether Odell was hurt or when he got shipped out, it was like addition by subtraction, that Baker didn't feel like he had to feed Odell targets. That opened up the offense to flow a little bit more. And I understand this is a completely different situation. And maybe this comes down to how you see Diggs' time ending at Buffalo. But do you think there's any element of CJ now feeling like he needs to feed Diggs just because he's big name, alpha guy, probably going to come in, assuming he's the number one receiver in the room?
Yeah, I actually don't think so. I think that if the Texans did not have a successful year last year and they were looking for offensive answers, that'd be one thing. But the Texans have a great formula on offense, and they have their guys. They have their room. Like, they don't need Diggs. This is not a savior to them. This is an addition to them that can lessen the load a little bit across the board. So I think for them, they don't look at this like Baker did back in the day, where it's like, I got to feed my guy. He's the stud. Like, no, he's got two studs. Like, Nico Collins is a top 10 receiver in this league. And I don't care what anybody says. The way that he played, the things he was able to do, he can move all over the field, play different positions across the board at receiver, and he can make plays. Diggs, honestly, is going to have to take a back seat to Nico Collins. And people might think that's crazy, whatever. Just turn on the tape. Nico is a dog. He's young. He's a stud. He's massive. Diggs is going to just piggyback off of his success. And he's going to be more open because of Nico. He's going to be more open because of Tank Dell. And I think that the yards that Diggs earns this year are going to be easier earned yards than he had to earn in Buffalo. Because in Buffalo, dude, like, until the very end, they had to throw to the tight end all the time. Like, Gabe Davis was nowhere to be found most of the year. Shakir started popping off at the end, and Diggs had a lot of eyes on him all over the field. He does not have to be that guy anymore. He can just go fit in, be that slot receiver, be the guy that's very specific on what he's asked to do, and just go play ball and enjoy the success that the Texans are about to have for the next run.
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting element here where the Texans voided the final 3 years of Diggs' contract. So he's basically on a one-year deal with the team, can hit free agency next year. There's this feeling that for Diggs, it just has to work. Like, in order for him to, whatever reputation he's now carrying as a guy who is trying to trade out, and a lot of that is, like, I don't think that's always fair to prescribe to a player. I think it's very situational. We don't always know what's happening behind the scenes. And so regardless of what's been created around him, the narrative created around him, I think he probably does need to make it work. And I think if that means slotting in behind Nico Collins, he seems like he's just going to make it work this year.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the year that Diggs just puts his head down, goes and tries to ride this wave of success, and he's going to have a good year. He's going to make plays when he gets the ball in his hand. I think he's going to be reliable. I think he's going to be the guy that he used to be. And I think that he's in a locker room that's young and talented. And this locker room is going to stick together for the next 5 to 10 years. Like, they're going to have core guys that are on this team now that'll be the reason why they have sustained success. And so Diggs, on the tail end of his career, just be the vet that comes in, bring your insight, bring your perspective. I think he's going to do that. And I think he's going to be a value add to them this year.